And today we've got Tomas with us, and we've got Aleksander who's joining on site. We're very grateful for they coming, or at least joining online. Huh?
I'm really sorry that I didn't make it, but it was impossible this time.
Well, hopefully next time. So I don't know, Tomas, could you tell us in a few words who you are and what you want to achieve as hopefully a parastronaut?
Yeah, so my name is Tomas, and I'm very glad to be here. I am studying biology with focus on microbiology and genetics, but I always have had and also a great passion for astronomy and therefore space sciences. And yeah, I've tried now to mingle my interest on the one hand in biology and on the other hand in astronomy. And I really am very interested in the field of space life sciences on the one hand, but as you can see, I am an active wheelchair user, and therefore the topic of inclusion in space and space missions is also of great interest of mine. And yeah, therefore I was glad to last summer to take part into the analog astronaut basic training of the Austrian Space Forum, where I also met for the first time virtually Eleanor, which I'm really glad for, because we had met virtually back then. And yeah, I would really like to become an analog astronaut someday. And within this discussion, I also with Aleksander, I'm going to discuss challenges, but also opportunities for people with physical disabilities in space science in general, but also for and in analog astronaut missions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being there. And Aleksander, could you introduce yourself? Because you were one of the probably first person to think about para-astronauts, so astronauts with disabilities. Could you share a bit more about how you got the idea? What's your background? What do you do at Lunares?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Aleksander Wasniowski. I'm a physician, radiologist right now, but previously I was a specialist in travel medicine. And when you combine travel medicine and radiology with telemedicine and radiation, then you get something which is, let's say, space medicine, maybe extreme medicine. And that's what I'm doing right now, as my PhD was on free radical theory of aging of organisms. And we know that this is one of the chronobiology is one of the major, let's say, currents in the field of biological science for space. And time and chronobiology is something which affects everyone, yeah? And it also affects everyone in this manner that people are getting less and less, let's say, fit. Some of them are disabled from the very beginning. Some of them will have worsened condition with the age. Some of them with the conditions of the environment, and everything is in our interest right now, because I noticed in 2015 it was that there was hardly any opportunity for or no opportunity at all for disabled people to be integrated in the space challenges. Maybe somebody who was IT specialist on a wheelchair somewhere in the background, of course, very important person, but not an astronaut. And I started to think of the disability as a result of the social attitude, actually, because people who are with inborn disabilities, they don't know different lives. So this is their own life. They have no other life. So they are able, okay, within their body, whatever they can do, they are able. They can stand up themselves and so on. And that's the society which creates the disability as we know it. And when we start to think backwards, to make some kind of backwards social engineering, then we can start to think that if so, then maybe in the next society, in the future, something which may occur in 30, 40 years on Mars or somewhere, people with disabilities may be even hyper able, okay? So, for example, the situation when, this is one of the best, I think, examples. When there is a colony on Mars and somebody is already blind, who was sent there, and the rest of the crew starts to lose the vision due to the radiation, eye injuries. We know that the vision problems in space are one of the most important. So they are losing the vision. They have the problem with that, and they go through every psychological problems connected with beginning of disability. And this blind person is already blind and can be a game changer for the crew, because he or she knows already how to cope with that. And if we prepare the spaceship or the habitat in advance, then there will be no surprise for anyone. And if we want to avoid the surprise, then we have to think of this kind of attitude already. That's why I decided to make a ICARES one, which was Innovative Concepts RS acronym, in 2017 with a analog astronaut who had no eyeballs and no hands. He lost those extremities and eyeballs in the blast. And so even the mechanism was something which was quite likely to happen on board. His name was Marcin Kaczmarzyk, and we started to work on it in Lunares at the very beginning. And a few years later, the European Space Agency claimed the para-astronaut and astronaut call. And they are even using my hyperability word in their manifesto. So I'm very glad that somebody is copying that, but you know, still copying. And we want still to focus on it, and that's why I'm so happy that I have such people like you here on site and online, and that's what we want to do.
Thank you so much, Aleksander. So yeah, as mentioned, now we see so astronauts with disabilities as hyperabilities, and there will be several ways it's going to be useful, both for long duration journeys where people might come back with disabilities, also just to learn and have a more inclusive artificial society is composed of everyone, so including everyone is actually in the benefit of all. But so you mentioned that the European Space Agency has now started a program for astronauts. Thomas, are you aware of any different programs that exist in the world for astronauts with hyperabilities, disabilities?
So I think we have to differentiate between programs where one will develop or become a real para-astronaut, like for programs that get disabled candidates into space, really, and then the analog missions. Both of them, in my point of view, are really very interesting, because also analog missions are of great importance and are often super interesting. So, but regarding to your question, and regarding to the programs, most likely most important and most famous program nowadays to become a real para-astronaut is the feasibility project of the European Space Agency, the Parastronaut project, where last year there has been selected a candidate for the first time with a physical disability to become the first parastronaut, which might probably most likely fly space. But with regards to analog missions, as Aleksander said, that there is within the Lunares program, the ICARES missions, which really promote inclusion of physically disabled people of getting an analog astronaut.
And to both of you, do you believe that there's disabilities that we cannot accommodate for, both in space and analog space missions? Is there anything, for example, when being blind did work in Mars, but it was also you could grapple yourself by touching the floor? That's something that in space would not work. But if we were to give access to more people in space, if it costs us less money at some point, which disability do you believe is not something that we could overcome? Or do you believe that there's like all chances that we can always something?
So I'm not a physician, so I'm not aware of all physical disabilities for sure, but I can speak just from my disability as being an active wheelchair user having a spinal cord injury. I think with this disability, I think, but I also certainly hope there is no limit for it. But maybe Aleksander have a more appropriate.
Yeah, let me ask you. Okay, let me ask you, Tomas. Just in a connection to her question, why did you choose the wheelchair? It wasn't your choice. It wasn't your choice that you had a spinal injury. So it wasn't your choice. So we cannot think of the programs for the para-astronaut by choosing the disability. We must think globally, okay? So the program, the habitats, the suits, everything should be ready for any kind of disability, not the chosen ones.
Absolutely. I was not talking that about that. I prefer that being a wheelchair user is the best or the most appropriate.
Yes, but you didn't choose the problem itself, yeah? You choose the solution, not the problem. The problem choose you actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have to, and that's the point actually. That's what we start with it. So that's why we wrote a letter to, which was published in Science, that ESA shouldn't go so shallow and to choose only somebody with a shorter leg, because they will do everything about the shorter leg, and suddenly somebody will have a different problem, and all the money which were spent for the shorter leg suit are for nothing. Okay, and the problem is that right now we are still the agencies are still around the 5 to 10 years horizon. Okay, and Mars plus 10 years is the horizon of Lunares. Okay, so 10 years after colonization of Mars, and nobody thinks in the perspective of 50 years. And that's the problem, because if you won't have money from agencies, they will say, okay, but this is something which refers to the situation 50 years plus, and nobody will take it into consideration. So that's why the analogs are so important, because we can still make it right now, thinking of the 50 years plus perspective, and this is something which may happen. And to be honest, I think of colonists on Mars, not about the space tourists or somebody who will go just to prove something. But I'm sure that if there is a colony on Mars and they will start to have their own society, they will have their own problems. And in our um, um, understanding of ability, of all of them will be disabled, actually. People born on Mars perhaps wouldn't be able to walk on Earth, never ever. And not only because of the muscle system, but many others. So we should think about the Mars colony as the colony of disabled people, terrestrial people. Okay, so that's so tricky thing, and of course, who will be involved? Already disabled people on Earth, and that's why you are so important, and other people, and that's why we need them in MCCs and on board, both. Okay, because this is like having somebody in MCC and mission control would be very nice to also be, from the understanding point of view. That's what I said at the beginning. The society makes the disability. So able people, fit people don't understand very often some things which are obvious for disabled people. That's why we should have them both in analogs as an astronaut and MCC members.
Actually, coming to my next question, do you think we should have fully crew? Please mute yourselves. Do you believe that we should have crews that have, for example, different disabilities, so we could accommodate for different? You could have somebody who's blind, somebody who's got in a wheelchair, somebody who's in a second hand, so that you can both, like, everybody can have learn from this because it's different disabilities, and then we could just try to pick a habitat that works very well. Obviously, if you have a habitat where you need, like, for example, for Astroland, where you need to hike for quite some time and it's difficult of access, then you're limiting it to quite a lot. Obviously, for space, it's different limitations that we can try to overcome. So would it be good to have a group with everybody has a form of disability and also mission control center? Or do you think that would be very, very difficult to accommodate a lot of work for do?
So I think also referring maybe to plans like to maybe setting up colonies on Mars or any other planets in future for let's say relatively great general public and diverse general public. I think it would be really meaningful to create missions for parastronauts with great variety of disabilities. However, I'm absolutely aware of that this requires very intense planning phase beforehand in order to really think about all the aspects to really create a good mission.
How about you, Aleksander? Do you think not fully disabled is not the right term, but fully with disabilities would be interesting? Or do you think
Once again, not fully, because I have some problems with. Can you repeat the question?
So my question was, do you believe that we should have a crew with, everyone has a disability, but it could be all different disabilities? Or do you think it's better to have a crew where you have people with some disabilities and others not? And maybe they can then learn.
Okay, we usually, we think we should think into separate ways. So from one point of view, every crew member, even healthy person, is potentially disabled person during the mission. So that's one thing. And on the other hand, we include people who are already disabled, just to, for example, how to say, falsificating the hypothesis of doing something or not doing, if we are talking about the analog process right now, okay? Because as you know, analogs are only for human factor science research, okay? Everything else may be done 10,000 better times in the laboratory. So if we want to have checked the human interactions, then we should build the proof very very sophisticated way, and be very careful about who should work with whom. But the general idea is that everybody on board can be disabled more or less with the time. So yes, I think that both are correct. So we can also take into consideration that we cannot have a crew of disabled people, or we may have the crew of the one disabled person, and then to make research on the dynamics of the group and so on. And that's, so there are many different things. I'm thinking of making analog with PTSD patients, because I don't believe that somebody who lands on Mars will be free of PTSD, for example. And one of the main ideas behind the Lunares and ICARES one was also to create a program of rehabilitation through being an astronaut, analog astronaut. I mean, it's not necessarily the problem of the leg or the hand will be rehabilitated, but the attitude, the psychological impact should be positive for such people.
If we think about a mission control center, if, for example, they have members who've got disabilities, and then you've got astronauts who do not have disabilities in the crew, or vice versa, how can mission control and the crew learn from one another and make sure that there's this awareness that the mission goes well? Because, for example, if you think, imagine I'm an able-bodied person and I can walk at a pace of 5K per hour to go and get something done. Somebody who might have a limp or might have trouble seeing, is going to maybe do it at a speed of 2.5 kilometers per hour. That's going to impact the flight plan. It's going to impact the mission. How do you make sure that you, if you are the person with the disability, you can communicate that clearly and tell people without it being tedious? How do you progress that?
So I think this question requires quite complex answer, because I would differentiate three scenarios. One hand, if the real analog astronauts are disabled. The other, if mission control members are disabled and analog astronauts are not. And the third aspect that covers the both aspects, I would say, for the topic that cover both scenarios, is the aspect of communication. I think communication in either way is extremely important for the success of a mission. Also beforehand, like during the training for the mission, but also within the mission itself. I think there wouldn't be much difference if members of mission control would be especially able, and the real analog astronauts were not. In my point of view, because I think then the real analog astronauts who are not especially able could use the same protocols as usual, but having the advice from mission control. But yeah, if the mission control members, from my point of view, are especially able or not, this doesn't make a difference for me. However, if the members of the analog astronauts were especially able and mission control is not, then this, in my point of view, requires a very good skills of empathy and communication to really feel and think about the needs and the form of communication, how mission control behaves and tells what to do for the specially abled astronauts. So,
if, for example, if I was in your stead and I had to do an analog mission, I don't know, but obviously it's easy for me to say it's just the way I would think. I would ask Mission Control Center or PIs, I would be like, okay, you get in my wheelchair and you try to do that experiment. And I would tell them, now you go in the base with my wheelchair and you try to do what you asked me to do. And then we see. And for example, one thing I noticed today, and I apologize for that, is the table where we have the food is really high. So it's more difficult for me to accept it. And it's something I didn't think of, and I think lots of us did not think of, because we don't know, right? So I think sometimes communication is great, but actually doing training, I don't know, Aleksander, if you think that we should do training between like people with abilities where you say, okay, now I'm gonna put your hand in your back and you're gonna try to do everything with a hand, I'm gonna blindfold you, to be really instead. So you have empathy, you have experience.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. However, for this, I would say ideal scenario, it would be much more easier if mission control knows beforehand the disabilities of the crew, so that mission control can really thoroughly prepare for the crew and really train for scenarios with the disabilities that they will have, and this would be, I would not say impossible, but very hard for a especially able diverse group with regards to the disabilities. So therefore, it would be, I think, every disability is different, but I think it would be much more easier if such a mission would be planned then with just one type of disability, so that mission control can concentrate really within their training beforehand on this specific type of disability.
So we could think, as we have more and more missions with the astronauts with disabilities, we could start with one disability, the next one we could have two astronauts with two different disabilities. So Mission Control Center can learn by iterations and increase the protocols and knowledge that they might require.
Absolutely, and as they are experts in other fields, like not only in like space sciences or science at all, that work probably with specifically able people, this could be a great opportunity also to establish a training course, maybe in the future, long-term future, to really get experts in communication, but also in experience of mission control participants and members, which really do have experience with leading analog missions with people with disabilities.
Aleksander, are you still here? I think he left. There he is. Yeah, I can see. Yeah, lovely. Aleksander, can you hear us? He's just back. The joys of communication. See, we can get astronauts with disabilities to space.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry.
You're back. You missed the best part. Shame on you.
Always the same.
Actually, it's perfect that you're here because I wanted you to talk about ICARES, this next mission coming on. So could you describe the crew? How do you prepare for it? How do you communicate with the astronauts with disabilities to prepare for contingency plans? And also, did you experience any friction in the ICARES 1 mission with this parastronaut? Because I guess sometimes you might make a mistake as an able-bodied person. You might say, "Oh, you can do this," and then they can't, and they're like, "How do you not know that?" So could you talk a bit more about this?
Yes, I would just make a small comments to the last sentence I heard before I lost my connection. It's you don't necessarily need disabled person in MCT to have communication problems. Okay, so the communication problems from MCC to the crew or back are something which is quite normal and usually happens, and we also notice that usually it's much more often during the Martian missions because the autonomy of the crew is much higher due to the lag and so on. And the next thing is the why we want to have MCC, a disabled astronaut in MCC. Just remind yourself the situation with Apollo 13, when one of the astronauts had to be replaced and he was left in the base, and he helped actually to save the crew of the Apollo 13. Answering the question about ICARES 2, we are very happy to welcome people who are interested as a crews, as MCCs and scientists and researchers to take part in this year to continue the ICARES 2, 3 missions with disabled astronauts. And we are completing the crew right now. And if somebody is interested, then you have Agata Mintus on board and you can talk to her. I also sent the manifesto in the chat, as maybe you saw in the PDF, so you can go through it with dates and so on. And the idea behind it is to continue the work which was already initiated in 2017, and to create the more space and to be more inclusive than the big agencies are. And so we are searching for people with disabilities, also not for the crews, but also for the MCTs right now. And if you ask me about the experiments, they always depend on researchers on board, because usually during every mission we have like 20 to 30 different experiments, and they are divided into bio experiments, engineering experiments, and technical and IT and other. But what we are interested in, and me personally as the flight surgeon, of course, in the safety of the crews, but also, and maybe the most for is most important part is the interaction with the crews. And also for the first time, I'd like to check the improvement of self-esteem, for example, of those people who are involved afterwards also, because it's not like 2 weeks and you finish the work, okay? Because we made ICARES 1 in 2017 and it's 2023, and we are still talking about ICARES 1 as a beginning of something bigger. So right now ICARES 2 is the offspring of the ICARES 1, but I hope that in the future more ICARES will come, even if I'm not involved, because that's the most important thing, that the machine is going, okay? So this is something nice. And but the detailed manifesto is on the in the PDF, and I think I won't take you more time to go through the PDF. We can. It would be much better if we talk to each other right now than to read the PDF.
I'll make sure to share it then around. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I've got one question for Thomas, which is, will you join ICARES GIE in the process of applying? And then I think it would be nice to maybe get questions from the public.
I will definitely apply. I haven't applied yet, but I will definitely apply.
Is it scary? Or like you're like, well, it's going to be absolutely fine. Like if you get it, obviously you get in the program, Do you think it's going to be scary for you? Something new?
Actually, I cannot evaluate yet. It will be, if I will get in, definitely a great experience. And yeah, I would really would like to pursue that journey.
I mean, if you need only freeze-dried food during analog missions, if I were you, I'd hide chocolates in my wheelchair. You know? We could all have them about it. So, does anyone have any questions for Aleksander and Tomas, or would like to express anything on the subject?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah. We have been talking a lot about special abilities in terms of physical issues. What about special abilities in terms of psychological issues? Can we, for example, imagine that somebody with being on the spectrum of autism actually being able to deal better with the isolation on Mars?
I mean, apparently all the engineers I know, we like this, so yeah. We survive.
If I can answer. Well, we don't know yet, because usually it's limited. To be quite honest, I had huge problems in the ICARES 1 with permissions from the ethical commissions, because since the World War II, that was a big problem with making experiments on disabled people. Due to the Reich and so on, the Holocaust and other things. And it was extremely difficult to go through it. So having permission to include people with this kind of spectrum and to make experiments on them would be even more difficult, if not impossible. But we have many, as Eleanor said,
Aleksander, you're breaking.
with this
It's new robotics.
kind of
Kind of like in a real analog mission.
I don't know if it's still. Karen, can you hear me well? Maybe it's us.
Sorry, I was mute. She's breaking up.
Karen, is it us or is it Aleksander? I'm gonna. Anyone with a question for Thomas?
Is that the CHASM wrap?
Oh my God, what is this?
Oh, we've lost him.
We will also, okay, so it's not us, it's him, right?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. I was a bit scared that we had lost the Wi-Fi. Okay, so apparently he's gonna have to continue. Did you manage to open the PDF? What I'll do is, if you can download it and put it on the Google Drive, and then we can share it to the participants later on. And I don't know if anyone has questions for Thomas, maybe. Hang on, double check. Now, any other comments you'd like to add to the discussion?
Oh. I think I was wondering that maybe a last point is maybe not directly related to analog missions, but I was wondering that there are also very few projects related to like scientific research on microgravity effects on disabled people.
Mm-hmm.
Like in my knowledge, there is just one like really systematic initiative that is performing parabolic flights, for example, like simulation.
Stephen Hawking was on a parabolic flight.
Yes.
Did we do data? don't know.
This is true. Stephen Hawking, and nowadays there's just one American initiative called AstroAccess, which is performing parabolic flights for research purposes with especially able people, and they're not only physically disabled people, but also like neurodiverse people. To my knowledge, this is the only one, and I think it's quite a bit of pity.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's going to catch on now that these are so good. So
Yeah, we are launching an initiative so that together with the space, so that it's a company that is preparing for exploration. So we are going to run a series of parabolic flights from Florida.
Okay.
And that will be already in paper, the global flight, but we are also planning to launch from space. We are in discussion with Bayern. Bayern is a military base which is now being reconfigured, and there is an opportunity that we will have activity there. And spaceman actually has flown disabled people, also the youngest parabolic astronaut, and also the oldest.
So Spaceland.
It's called Spaceland, and actually we are collaborating during Mars, with them in terms of research opportunities, and also in the connection with another initiative. Like
Okay. So I don't know if online if you heard, but basically Roman Mars is collaborating with Spaceland, and they're planning on doing parabolic flights from Switzerland, hopefully, and also from Florida with parastronauts. So that's gonna be fantastic. Aleksander, any comments? Because we lost you and you gave us some quite Daft Punk vibes before with your cat connection not working.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Well, I just wanted to comment that people with autism are around and are in our team, so I think that we can also include them, and I want to include people with some psychological issues as well in the future. And also, I would like to have geriatric mission with elderly people on board to see how it would work. And we are trying to be as inclusive as possible right now. And it's only from the pragmatic point of view.
Yeah, I mean, Aleksander, you said before that it can be tricky to get permission to perform experiments on these people, but I would rather see it with performing experiments with these people rather than on them, and excluding people with special abilities. That's discrimination.
Yes, that's how we try to argument always in this way, and it usually works, but not for the first time. Usually after 3 or 4 meetings with the committee.
Yeah.
Right. Well, fantastic. Thank you, you both. Really, thank you for.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and sorry for the connection problems.
Thank you so much, Aleksander, for coming. Online, halfway. But thank you so much for your contribution.
Yeah, halfway.
And to everyone, so we got the next workshop in about 15 minutes. So Karen, what I suggest is you start whenever you're ready. We're probably going to take a bit more time because we've got a tea break right now. So don't wait for us. I'll just put on the link, and then on the background, we do like just before. And yeah, good luck. Thank you for helping, and hope it was useful to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.